Karoline Leavitt stepped onto the vibrant stage of The Ellen Show in Los Angeles, her eyes sharp, her posture rigid, sensing a trap beneath the bright lights. The audience buzzed, their cheers mixed with skeptical murmurs, unsure why the White House press secretary, a staunch Trump ally, was Ellen's guest. Ellen sat in her chair, her smile wide, her voice light, but her eyes gleamed with intent. "Karoline, welcome," she said, her words smooth, teasing. "It's brave coming here, defending Trump on my turf." The crowd laughed, the jab a spark in the tense air. Leavitt took her seat, her face calm, her voice steady, ready to strike back. "Brave?" she said, her eyes locking onto Ellen. "I'm here for truth, Ellen, not your comedy routine." The crowd gasped, some chuckling, others hissing, her retort a bold jab. Ellen leaned forward, her smile tightening, her voice sharp. "Truth?" she said, her tone mocking. "You spin lies for Trump daily, that's your job, right?" The audience roared with laughter. Ellen's taunt meant to rattle Leavitt, to paint her as a mouthpiece out of her depth. Leavitt's lips curled, her voice clear, her words a blade cutting through the laughter. "Spin?" she said, her eyes fierce. "I speak facts, Ellen, while you hide behind jokes to dodge real talk." The crowd hushed, some clapping, others murmuring, her comeback flipping the room's energy. She clutched a tablet, loaded with clips of Ellen's past interviews, dodging tough questions. "You're the spinner here," Leavitt said, her voice bold. "Want to talk my job? Let's talk yours." The studio quaked, Ellen's smile faltering, her plan to humiliate Leavitt unraveling. Ellen's team watched from backstage, their faces tense, the live feed spiking with viewers. Leavitt's sharp retort was trending, clips of her facing Ellen, spreading fast, some praising her nerve, others slamming her audacity. A producer whispered, "She's turning it on Ellen." Ellen's manager nodded, her voice tight. "Get her a new angle," she said, digging for dirt on Leavitt's press briefings to counterattack. Leavitt's aide in the wings smirked, her eyes fierce. "Karoline's got this," she said, knowing the nation was hooked on the brewing war. The audience leaned forward, their energy shifting, some now eyeing Ellen with doubt as Leavitt pressed her advantage. "You invited me to mock me," she said, her voice relentless, her eyes boring into Ellen. "But I'm here to call out your game, your fake charm, your old scandals." The crowd gasped, some laughing, others booing, her reference to Ellen's 2020 workplace controversy a direct hit. Ellen's face reddened, her voice sharp. "You're out of line, Karoline," she said, her eyes cold. The stage pulsed. The clash, a raw, unyielding brawl. Leavitt's wit ready to turn the laughter against Ellen. News screens outside the studio flashed the showdown, clips of Leavitt's attack lighting up social media. The nation riveted. Ellen gripped her chair, her voice tense, her authority teetering. "You don't scare me," she said, her words a weak jab. But Leavitt's glare was iron, her voice clear, her fight a storm surging through the studio. The audience poised for her next move to shatter Ellen's carefully crafted stage. Karoline Leavitt's biting jab surged through the Los Angeles studio of The Ellen Show, her attack on Ellen's fake charm and past scandals igniting a storm of tension. The audience's reactions swirled, a mix of gasps and uneasy laughter, some still chuckling at Ellen's earlier taunts, others now wavering under Leavitt's fierce counterstrike. Leavitt sat poised, her eyes sharp, her tablet glowing with evidence, each clip a weapon to dismantle Ellen's stage. Ellen leaned forward in her chair, her face flushed, her voice tight with forced humor. "Out of line," she said, her words sharp, mocking. "Karoline, you're the guest, not the host, so maybe cool it with the attacks." Leavitt's pulse quickened, but her voice stayed bold, her retort slicing through Ellen's deflection. "Cool it?" she said, her eyes locked on Ellen. You invited me to poke fun, but I'm here to expose your act, not join it. The crowd stirred, some clapping, others murmuring, her audacity shifting the room's pulse. She tapped her tablet, pulling a clip of Ellen dodging a 2020 workplace scandal question, her charm faltering. "This is you, Ellen," Leavitt said, her voice fierce. All smiles, no substance. The studio quaked, Ellen's grin twitching, her control slipping. Ellen waved a hand, her laugh forced, her voice edged with venom. "Expose me?" she said, her eyes narrowing. "You're a Trump cheerleader, Karoline, spinning lies for a living. That's your act." The crowd laughed, some louder, others hesitant, her jab a bid to regain the stage. Leavitt's smile was cold, her voice clear, ruthless. "Cheerleader?" she said, swiping to a new clip, Ellen praising a controversial guest while dodging backlash. "You play nice for ratings, Ellen. I call that spin." The audience gasped, some cheering, others booing, Leavitt's strike turning their laughter against Ellen. Backstage, Ellen's team huddled, their faces tense, watching the live feed spike with viewers. Leavitt's clips were trending, her attack on Ellen's scandals rallying some, enraging others. A producer clutched a phone, scrolling through Leavitt's press briefings for dirt. "She's hitting too hard," the producer said, her voice tight. Ellen's manager nodded, her eyes fierce. "Find something now," she said, desperate to shift the narrative. Leavitt's aide in the wings grinned, her voice low. "Karoline's flipping this," she said, texting allies to amplify the clash online. The crowd's energy tilted, some now laughing at Ellen's flustered retorts, their earlier loyalty fraying as Leavitt pressed forward. "You thought I'd be an easy target," she said, her voice relentless, her eyes boring into Ellen. "But your jokes are weak, your stage is crumbling, and I'm showing why." The audience roared, some standing, others shouting, her words a direct hit. Ellen's hands clenched, her voice sharp. "You're a guest, not a judge," she said, her eyes cold. The stage thrummed, Leavitt's wit a blade cutting deeper into Ellen's fading control. Newsrooms across Los Angeles blazed with the showdown, clips of Leavitt's takedown flooding screens, the nation gripped by the chaos. Ellen's smile wavered, her voice tense, her authority unraveling. "You don't run this show," she said, her words a fading spark. But Leavitt's glare was unyielding, her voice clear, her fight a torrent sweeping through the studio, the audience poised for her next strike to bury Ellen in her own laughter. Karoline Leavitt's relentless assault surged through the Los Angeles studio of The Ellen Show, her sharp takedown of Ellen's weak jokes, and crumbling stage shifting the crowd's allegiance. Laughter and boos mingled in a restless tide, some audience members now chuckling at Ellen's faltering retorts, others clinging to their loyalty, the room a jagged split of emotions. Leavitt sat forward, her eyes fierce, her tablet alive with clips exposing Ellen's contradictions, each one a strike against the host's fading charm. Ellen gripped her chair, her face tight, her voice laced with forced levity. "Karoline, you're pushing it," she said, her words tense, biting. "This is my show, not your soapbox." Leavitt's heart pounded, but her voice cut through, bold, unyielding, a spear aimed at Ellen's core. "Your show?" she said, her eyes searing Ellen. "It's a stage for dodging truth, and I'm tearing that down." The crowd erupted, some cheering wildly, others hissing, her audacity a spark igniting the chaos. She swiped her tablet, playing a clip of Ellen laughing off a 2021 scandal question, her deflection glaring. "This is your charm?" Leavitt said, her voice fierce. "Hiding, while I speak facts." The studio rocked, Ellen's face reddening, her grip on the audience slipping. Ellen leaned closer, her smile gone, her voice sharp, a desperate jab to reclaim control. "Facts," she said, her eyes flashing. "You're a Trump mouthpiece, Karoline, twisting words for power, That's your game." The crowd laughed, some louder, others uneasy, her taunt a bid to flip the narrative. Leavitt's glare was ice, her voice steady, ruthless. "Twisting?" she said, pulling a new clip, Ellen praising a guest tied to controversy, sidestepping backlash. "You bend truth for applause, Ellen. I call that fake." The audience gasped, some clapping, others booing, Leavitt's strike turning their laughter into Ellen's wound. Backstage, Ellen's team scrambled, their pulses racing, the live feed spiking with millions watching. Leavitt's clips dominated online, her attack on Ellen's scandals trending, splitting viewers between outrage and awe. A producer clutched a laptop, digging through Leavitt's briefings for a counterattack. "She's killing us," the producer said, her voice strained. Ellen's manager nodded, her eyes fierce. "Find dirt, fast," she said, desperate to save the show. Leavitt's aide, watching from the sidelines, smirked, her voice low. "Karoline's winning," she said, texting allies to fuel the fire. The audience's mood shifted further, more now laughing at Ellen's flustered jabs, their cheers for Leavitt growing louder, a tide turning against the host. "You thought you'd mock me," Leavitt said, her voice clear, unyielding, her eyes boring into Ellen. "But your scandals, your dodging, that's the real joke, and I'm exposing it." The crowd roared, some standing, others shouting, her words a crushing blow. Ellen's hands shook, her voice a snarl. "You're nobody here, Karoline," she said, her eyes cold. The stage pulsed, Leavitt's wit a relentless force shredding Ellen's fading empire. News screens outside the studio flared with the clash. Leavitt's takedown a wildfire across the nation, viewers glued to the chaos. Ellen's face twitched, her voice tense, her stage unraveling. "You don't get to judge me," she said, her words a dying ember. But Leavitt's glare was steel, her voice clear, her fight a storm tearing through the studio, the audience ready for her next blow, to bury Ellen in the laughter she'd sparked. Karoline Leavitt's savage wit tore through the Los Angeles studio of The Ellen Show, her brutal exposure of Ellen's scandals flipping the audience's laughter into a weapon against the host. Cheers and jeers collided in a frenzied storm, more crowd members now snickering at Ellen's weakening jabs, their earlier loyalty crumbling under Leavitt's relentless fire. Leavitt leaned forward, her eyes blazing, her tablet glowing with damning clips, each one a hammer pounding Ellen's fading stage. Ellen sat rigid, her face pale, her voice a strained mix of anger and forced charm. "Karoline, you're making a fool of yourself," she said, her words sharp, desperate. "This isn't your press room, it's my show." Leavitt's blood surged, but her voice rang clear, her retort a blade slicing Ellen's deflection. "Fool?" she said, her eyes locked on Ellen. "You're the one dodging truth, hiding behind your smile while I lay you bare." The crowd roared, some leaping up, others hissing, her audacity a thunderclap shifting the room's core. She tapped her tablet, playing a clip of Ellen sidestepping a 2022 controversy, her charm exposed as hollow. "This is your show?" Leavitt said, her voice fierce. "A stage for lies, and I'm dismantling it." The studio quaked, Ellen's hands trembling, her control in tatters. Ellen's eyes flashed, her voice a low snarl, her words a frantic lunge to reclaim the stage. "Dismantle me?" she said, her face flushed. "You're a trump pawn, Karoline, selling lies for clout. That's your whole act." The crowd laughed, some hesitantly, others fading, her taunt losing its sting. Leavitt's smile was cold, her voice steady, vicious. "Pawn?" she said, swiping to a new clip, Ellen cozying up to a disgraced guest, dodging accountability. "You sell out for ratings, Ellen, that's the real scam." The audience gasped, some cheering, others booing, Leavitt's strike turning their laughter into Ellen's shame. Backstage, Ellen's team watched in panic, their hearts racing, the live feed spiking with millions glued to the clash. Leavitt's clips were a wildfire online, Her takedown of Ellen's controversies splitting viewers, some hailing her, others raging. A producer gripped a phone, scouring Leavitt's briefings for a comeback. "She's destroying Ellen," the producer said, her voice tense. Ellen's manager clenched her fists, her eyes fierce. "Get something, anything," she said, desperate, to save the show. Leavitt's aide in the shadows grinned, her voice low. "Karoline's got her," she said, texting allies to push the narrative further. The crowd's tide turned sharper, more laughing openly at Ellen's flustered retorts, their cheers for Leavitt a growing roar, drowning the host's fading charm. "You invited me to humiliate me," Leavitt said, her voice clear, unyielding, her eyes piercing Ellen. "But your lies, your fake tears, they're the joke, and I'm making you face it." The audience surged, some waving signs, others shouting, her words a crushing tide. Ellen's face contorted, her voice a hiss. "You're nothing here, Karoline," she said, her eyes hollow. The stage thrummed, Leavitt's fire a relentless force shattering Ellen's crumbling empire. Newsrooms across the nation flared with the showdown, Leavitt's triumph blazing across screens, the audience's laughter a requiem for Ellen's stage. Ellen's hands shook, her voice a broken gasp, her show unraveling. "You won't win this," she said, her words a dying spark. But Leavitt's glare was iron, her voice clear, her fight a torrent sweeping through the studio. The crowd, poised for her final strike to bury Ellen in the wreckage of her own failed trap. Karoline Leavitt's ferocious onslaught surged through the Los Angeles studio of The Ellen Show, her ruthless exposure of Ellen's lies turning the audience's laughter into a blade that cut the host's legacy to shreds. The crowd's roars swelled into a chaotic tempest, most now jeering at Ellen's faltering jabs, their earlier cheers for her drowned by Leavitt's blazing defiance. Leavitt sat tall, her eyes searing, her tablet brimming with clips that exposed Ellen's hollow charm, each one a final nail in the host's crumbling stage. Ellen slumped in her chair, her face a mask of rage and despair, her voice a broken rasp. "Karoline, you've gone too far," she said, her words weak, desperate. "This is my show, and you're done." Leavitt's heart thundered, but her voice boomed, clear, merciless, a hammer smashing Ellen's last defense. "Done?" she said, her eyes drilling into Ellen. "You're the one finished, your lies exposed, your stage a ruin." The crowd erupted, some leaping to their feet, others shouting, her audacity a lightning strike. She played a final clip, Ellen dodging a 2023 scandal question with a fake laugh, her deceit glaring. "This is your legacy," Leavitt said, her voice fierce. "A fraud, and I've torn it apart." The studio shook, Ellen's hands trembling, her empire collapsing under Leavitt's fire. Ellen's voice cracked, a desperate snarl, her eyes wild as she leaned forward. "You're nobody, Karoline," she spat, her words a dying claw. "A Trump stooge, mocked by my audience? You'll never win." The crowd laughed, but it was thin, most now cheering Leavitt, their laughter aimed at Ellen's crumbling facade. Leavitt's glare was steel, her voice steady, vicious. "Mocked?" she said, waving her tablet. "They're laughing at you, Ellen, your scandals, your fake tears. I've shown them the truth." The audience roared, some weeping, others screaming, Leavitt's strike turning their laughter into Ellen's grave. Backstage, Ellen's team stood frozen, their faces pale, the live feed spiking with millions watching the massacre. Leavitt's clips dominated online, her takedown of Ellen's controversies a wildfire, splitting viewers between awe and fury. A producer dropped her phone, her voice hollow. "Ellen's lost them," she said. Ellen's manager sank into a chair, her eyes dull. "It's over," she muttered, their counterattack plans in ashes. Leavitt's aide in the wings pumped her fist, her voice fierce. "Karoline's buried her," she said, texting allies to fan the flames. The audience's tide turned fully, their laughter now a relentless chant for Leavitt, Ellen's stage a shattered relic under their scorn. "You thought you'd break me," Leavitt said, her voice clear, unyielding, her eyes piercing Ellen's soul. "But your lies, your show, they're nothing, and I've proved it." The crowd surged, some waving her clips, others shouting, her words a tidal wave. Ellen's face collapsed, her voice a sob. "You can't end me," she whispered, her eyes hollow. The stage pulsed, Leavitt's fire a relentless force crushing Ellen's world. Newsrooms blazed with Leavitt's triumph, her clips a storm across the nation. The audience's laughter a requiem for Ellen's reign. Ellen sat broken, her voice gone, Leavitt's words, "You're nothing," a relentless haunt. Leavitt stood, her glare cold, her fight eternal, and stormed off the stage, her tablet a smoking gun. The crowd's roars chased her, a dirge for Ellen's career as the cameras cut, leaving the host alone, shattered in the wreckage of Leavitt's brutal, audience-fueled victory, her laughter a curse that would never fade.